Hi everyone, in this video I want to talk a little bit about the blood moons and this blood moon pattern over here that was discovered some time ago, because I think I've had what might be a really important revelation concerning this sign. I think I'm finally beginning to understand what this represents and what the blood moons are all about. And originally it was believed that this timeline would represent the tribulation, the 70th week of Daniel, and it was believed that it would probably start sometime around this set of blood moons over here would be the beginning of the tribulation, and then this would mark the middle of Daniel's 70th week with the abomination of desolation, and then this would be the end of the tribulation over here. As you can see from this chart, this is what was surmised concerning this pattern initially, and obviously that's not how it worked out. But even at the time when this pattern was first discovered, I was leaning more towards the rapture happening somewhere around here, which is what I believe to be the midst of this pattern. But as it's turned out that the midst is actually somewhere over here. And in order to understand why the midst is so important, it's really important to have a correct understanding of Daniel 9:27, and it's important to understand who this prophecy is about. Primarily, it's primarily about Messiah the Prince. It's about Jesus confirming the covenant. So over here where it says, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease," it's important to understand that Jesus fulfilled that at his first coming. Jesus was the bridegroom, and he came in 27 AD to confirm the covenant. And of course, this is in verse 27, so God is confirming the year of the Lord's arrival as the Messiah in 27 AD with this verse. But the book of Daniel also happens to be the 27th book of the Bible. So that's another confirmation by God that it was in 27 AD that Jesus came to confirm the covenant. And it was in the midst of the week that the Messiah was cut off, that the bridegroom was taken away. And so Jesus was in the bride chamber for 3.5 years until he was cut off, until he was taken away. And you can see that in all 3 of the Gospels, where Jesus said, "Can the children of the bride chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then they shall fast." So Jesus was in the bride chamber for 3.5 years until he was cut off, and the bridegroom was taken away. And of course, this is when Jesus caused the sacrifice and oblation to cease, because he became the ultimate sacrifice. And you can see that in Hebrews 10 and 11, that once Jesus became the ultimate sacrifice, there was no more need for sacrifice because Jesus fulfilled that. And I just wanted to mention that the year 27 AD is also confirmed in the Gospel of John, where John the Baptist said, "He it is who coming after me is preferred before me, whose shoes latchet I am not worthy to unloose." And so he's talking about the coming of the Messiah here in verse 27. So that's another confirmation for the year. But John also confirms the fact that Jesus came as the bridegroom, and you can see that in John 3:29, where John the Baptist said, "He that hath the bride is the bridegroom, but the friend of the bridegroom which standeth and heareth him rejoiceth greatly because of the bridegroom's voice. This my joy therefore is fulfilled." So John confirms that Jesus came as the bridegroom, and he also confirms the year 27 AD. And so what I'm realizing is that the number 27 is very important, and I've also had a revelation concerning that number as well, but I'll have to talk about that in another video, because for now I want to talk about this revelation over here concerning the blood moon patterns, and I want to explain why this is a midst, but the midst of the 70th week would actually be over here, because another thing that I wanted to explain about Daniel's 70th week is that this week actually represents the bridegroom being in the bride chamber with the bride. In Jewish weddings, the weddings last for 7 days, and if you apply a year for a day, this would be 7 years. And so Jesus was in the bride chamber for 3.5 years, and then he was taken away. And what I believe also represents this week is the two main feasts, the spring feast and the fall feast. And in the spring you have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which Jesus fulfilled the first half of the week. And you also have the Feast of Sukkot, which is actually a parallel to the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So Jesus fulfilled the first half of the Feast of Unleavened Bread as well. And that's why it's in John 7 that when Jesus was at the Feast of Tabernacles, when he went to the temple on the Feast of Tabernacles, he went, as it were, in secret initially, but it was in the midst of the feast that Jesus went up to the temple and taught. And it's interesting that that comes up in John 7 verse 14, because that would be 777. And before that, Jesus had said to his brothers, when they said they were going to the Feast of Tabernacles, he said in verse 6, "Then Jesus said unto them, My time is not yet come, but your time is always ready." So Jesus said his time had not yet come. And then it's in verse 14 in John 7, which is 777, that Jesus came in the midst of the feast and went up into the temple and taught. Okay, so I just wanted to explain why the midst is very important. But what happened is I was watching a video by Pastor Sandy Armstrong, and in this video he was talking about typologies and how Jesus fulfilled the Passover. And as he was explaining that, it just dawned on me that the numbers seem to match up with this blood moon pattern. And so that's how I received the revelation of what I believe this pattern represents. But I'm going to play a little bit of the video so you can see if you make the same connection that I made while watching the video. But I have a lot more that I want to try to explain concerning this pattern, but I'll have to do that in the next video. And so I'm just going to probably end this video with a short clip from Pastor Sandy Armstrong's video, and I'm not sure if I have any time left after that to continue. So if not, I'll continue in the next video.
Now, in Matthew chapter 8, verse 28. Are you there? It says, when he arrived at the other side in the region of Gadarenes, two demon-possessed men coming from the tomb met him. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. Do you want, he says, what do you, and they said this to him. They said, what do you want with us, Son of God? They shouted to Jesus, right? Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time? Now, when I read that, I think in 2007 or so, I said, Lord, how is it this demon knows that he's going to be tormented? And how does he know that Jesus is there too early to do it? And how does he know what the appointed time is? Because if he knows the appointed time, then why am I dealing with a whole community of Christians that don't know the appointed time? So it is for us to know the appointed time, because God has set a day for judgment. God has set a day where time runs out. And so I thought it was really unfair for a demon to have this knowledge and the children of God not to have this knowledge. So we should know the appointed time. I want you to go to Exodus chapter 12. Hallelujah. In Exodus chapter 12, it says, the Lord said to Aaron, to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, this month is to be for you the first month of the year. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household. Now they're going to hold on to this lamb for 4 days, because in verse 6 it says, take care of them, those lambs, until what? Until the 14th day of the month. And it says, when all the people of the community of Israel must slaughter them in twilight. So on the 10th day, they're going to pick a lamb. On the 14th, they're going to kill this lamb. Okay? At twilight. Now, when Jesus comes into the world, because we know if you're talking about a lamb, you're talking about the future Sahai Elohim, the Lamb of God, right? You're talking about the future. So when Jesus comes, he enters into Jerusalem on the donkey on the 10th of Nisan, and God made sure that men arrested him on the 14th of Nisan. So do you think they decided to arrest Jesus, or you think Jesus orchestrated that you're going to arrest me on the 14th? So, because Jesus knew what his appointed time was. Jesus knew, I can't die in the winter. I already set a day for my death, and it's going to be on the 14th of Nisan. So they arrest Jesus on the 14th of Nisan, and they crucify him on the 14th of Nisan. And then now he knows after the 14th of Nisan, 15, 16, 17, he's going to resurrect and be out of the grave. When? On the 17th of Nisan. Why? Because 17 is the year of the victory. Like this year.
Okay, so this is the pattern. Jesus was crucified on the 14th of Nisan, and then he was actually placed in the tomb as it began to dawn on Nisan 15th. If you look at the word in the Greek where it says the unleavened bread drew on, it actually, in the Greek, it says it was just as it began to dawn. So Jesus was placed in the tomb as it began to dawn Thursday morning. He was in the tomb for 3 24-hour periods. That was 3 days and 3 nights. And then he rose from the dead just before it began to dawn Sunday morning. So it was just before dawn Sunday morning that Jesus rose from the dead. That would have been the 18th of Nisan. And so when you apply it to this timeline over here, the perfect lamb was chosen on the 10th. It was inspected for 4 days. And then this would represent when Jesus was crucified and then placed in the tomb. And then he would have been in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights. And this is where we would currently be on this timeline. This is the August 21st eclipse. And Jesus resurrected just before dawn on the 3rd day, which would have been the 18th of Nisan. So it would be just before these blood moons over here, if the Passover is in fact a type of this blood moon pattern. And I'm just about out of time, but have more that I would like to explain about this, but I'll have to do that in the next video. Thank you.